The best way to learn about Excel 2013 is to start using it. This is what you see when you start Excel for the first time. You can open an existing workbook over here, or start with a template. Since this is our first time, let's keep it simple and select Blank Workbook. The area down here is where you create your worksheet. And you'll find all the tools you need to work on it up here in this area called the ribbon. In this area, you'll find the name box and formula bar. You'll see what those do as we go along. Now click somewhere in the work area. These little rectangles called cells each hold one piece of information, some text, a number, or a formula. Let's say we want to create a worksheet to track expenses on an expansion project. Type the first budget item and press Enter. There are literally millions of cells in a worksheet, but each one can be identified using this grid system of rows and columns. For example, the address of this cell is C6, column C, row 6. The name box shows which cell is selected. You'll see why addresses are important later. Next, type the other budget items. This is a breakdown of the work required for the expansion project. If the text doesn't fit in the cells, come up here and hold the mouse over the column border until you see a double-headed arrow. Then click and drag the border to widen the column. Now to make our worksheet more interesting, let's add rough estimates for each work item in the next column. To make the numbers look like dollar amounts, we'll add some formatting. First, select the numbers by clicking the first number and dragging the mouse down the list. The gray highlighting and green border mean the cells are selected. Right-click the selection, and the right-click menu opens, along with this box up here called the Mini Toolbar. The Mini Toolbar changes depending on what you select. In this case, it contains commands for formatting the cells. Click the $ to format the numbers as dollar amounts. Now it's beginning to look more like a worksheet. To make it official, let's add a header row up here so that anyone who looks at the worksheet will know what the data means in each column. Next, let's do something to the data to make it easier to work with. Select the header and data. Click the top left corner and drag the mouse to the bottom right. This time, instead of right-clicking, just hold the mouse over the selection and a button appears. Click it and the Quick Analysis lens opens. This contains a set of tools for helping you analyze your data. Click Tables, and then click Table. And the data is converted to a table. You don't have to do this, but working with data as a table has certain advantages. For example, you can click these arrows to quickly sort or filter the data. You also have a lot of commands and options to choose from up here on the ribbon. For example, we can add a total row to the table or remove the banded rows. While we're up here, let's take a closer look at the ribbon. The commands and options you can work with are organized into these tabs. Most of the commands you'll need are on the Home tab. For example, you can come here to format text and numbers, or change a cell style. The Insert tab has commands for inserting things, like pictures and charts. We'll look at some of the other tabs later in this course. The Table Tools Design tab is called a contextual tab because it appears only when you're working on the table. When you select a cell outside the table, the tab goes away. You'll also see contextual tabs when you're working with other insertable objects, like sparklines and pivot charts. Our worksheet is pretty small now, but there's plenty of room to grow in Excel as your project expands. However, before we do any more work, let's save the workbook. Probably the most important part of creating a workbook, other than writing it of course, is saving it. For example, if the power were to go out right now, all of our hard work would be gone unless we'd saved it to a file. Move up here to this set of commands called the Quick Access Toolbar and click Save. The first time you save a workbook, you come to this area called the Backstage. You won't find any formatting commands here. The Backstage is all about opening, saving, printing, sharing, exporting, and modifying Excel options. In other words, all that behind-the-scenes stuff. When you first save a workbook, you come here to Save As. You choose whether you want to save it to your computer or to the cloud using Office 365 SharePoint or OneDrive. I've already signed in to my online account, so now I can click here and browse for a location on my OneDrive. Enter a file name and click Save. It's just like saving to a computer, except that now I can access the file on any computer connected to the internet. Or I can share it with others by sending an email message containing a link to the online file. When you want to show your workbook to others, click Save one last time. Then click the File tab to go to the Backstage. Click here to print the workbook. See a preview of how the workbook will look after it's printed. Select a printer in the list, then click Print. You can also export your workbook in a number of formats, such as PDF. Up next, we'll expand our workbook by inserting more columns and rows. Let's look at the commands on the ribbon more closely. We've already covered the Home tab. These are the ribbon commands you'll probably use most often as you work on a worksheet. Commands for copying, pasting, the Format Painter. Here are commands for formatting the fonts and numbers, and adding a style. For example, we can select this data and then format it as a table. Look through the gallery and choose a style. Our data has a header row, so click OK. With the table selected, we get a special tab. This one is for working with the table's design. Let's add a total row. Note that the tab goes away when you click outside the table. Now let's see what's on the Insert tab. This is where you go to add something like a chart or an illustration. Let's add a picture. The first thing you'll need to do is resize it to fit using the corner resize handles. Then you can move it where you want on the worksheet. With the picture selected, you get the Picture Tools Format tab. I'm going to click Crop and then crop out part of this wall so it looks better on the page. The Insert tab also has some new tools you'll want to check out on your own, like Screenshot and Sparklines. On the Page Layout tab, you have commands for working with the setup of your pages and alignment of elements. You can also select a theme for your workbook, which applies a professional-looking set of fonts and colors to everything. Select the one you like. You can then use Chart Options to choose how you want to apply the theme colors to your charts. The Formulas tab is where you'll find the function library and other formula-related commands. For example, you can click here to show your formulas. Let's add a column to this data, and then add a formula that adds the data in the other columns. You could write a formula manually, but why do that when you can insert an AutoSum function? Click Sum, and Excel adds the function and auto-completes the arguments in the formula for you. Press Enter. Now you can take it one step further and drag this little green handle to autofill the formula to the other cells. The Data tab has commands for working with data. For example, you can connect to external data sources with these commands, and click here to access the Data Connection Wizard. The Review tab has the spell checker and commands to add and review comments. And finally, the View tab has commands and options for changing how you view your worksheets. For example, you can remove grid lines. Click Freeze Panes to keep header rows or columns from scrolling. One more thing you may be interested in is headers and footers. You get to them by clicking Page Layout View and clicking here. Yes, Excel now lets you work with your worksheets as they appear on the printed page. After you've added and formatted your data and inserted your charts and pivot tables, it's time to save, print, export, or share your workbook. After you finish your workbook, Excel 2013 has many options for saving, printing, exporting, and sharing it. And you'll find all those options here in the Backstage. Like Save As. Typically, you save a file to your computer, but you could also save a workbook to an online service. I've already logged on to my account in Excel, so now I can save the workbook the same way I'd save it to my computer. Only now I can access it from any computer connected to the internet. Click Share after you save a workbook if you want to share it with others. Or you can export it in a number of other file types, such as PDF. Now you have a pretty good idea of what's involved in making the switch from Excel 2003 to Excel 2013. There's just one more thing you should know, and it's about compatibility. In the second video, we converted an Excel 2003 XLS file to the new XLSX format. The two formats are different, but in most cases you'll only run into a problem when you want to share your workbook with someone who uses Excel 2003. If that's the case, you have two options. The first option is to save the file in the older XLS format. Here's how to do that. First, in Excel 2013, go to the Backstage. With Info selected here, click Check for Issues, and then run the Compatibility Checker. The Compatibility Checker checks to see if there will be any problems when saving in the older format. Take a look at the results and modify the workbook if you feel that's necessary. Finally, click Save As. choose a location, and then in the Save As dialog box, change the Save As type to Excel 97 to 2003. Now the person you're sharing the file with can open the workbook in the older version of Excel. The second option for the person using Excel 2003 is to download an add-in called the Compatibility Pack. After they install it on their computer with Excel 2003, they can open XLSX files in their older program. A link to the Compatibility Pack is available at the course summary. So that's it. You should have all the information you need to make the switch to Excel 2013. Of course, there's always more to learn. So check out the course summary at the end for more information on Excel 2013.
Your Excel workbook contains sensitive strategic data, so you want to require others to enter a password to open the workbook. Click File, click Protect Workbook, click Encrypt with Password, type your password, click OK, retype your password, click OK again, and click Save. Now when I open the workbook, I'm prompted for the password. I'm going to store the password in a safe place. If I forget it, there's no way to recover it and no way to open the workbook. If the workbook's shared on the network, make sure only people you want can delete the workbook. You may need to work with your organization's IT staff on this. Alternately, you can share the data freely with anyone without requiring a password, but require a password to make changes to it. Let's look at how to do it, this time in the worksheet of a workbook. Right-click the Worksheets tab, click Protect Sheet, type your password, click OK, retype your password, click OK again, and click Save or use the keyboard shortcut Control-S. If you try to make changes to cells or charts in the worksheet, you get an error. Again, if the password's forgotten, there's no way to recover it and make changes to the worksheet. You may be able to copy the data to another worksheet, depending on how the original worksheet was protected. But better to store your password in a safe place, just in case. In this case, someone could delete the password-protected worksheet from the workbook because the workbook's not password protected. We'll go over how to prevent this in the next video. Up next, password protect workbooks and worksheets in detail.